Welcome to the Conscious Embodiment Summit. Reveal your body's wisdom, unleash your creativity, and transcend your trauma. I'm Gregg Westwood, your host. I'm so honored to introduce my next guest, who is our keynote speaker for today, Loch Kelly. Loch is an award-winning author, licensed psychotherapist, and recognized leader in the field of meditation and awakening. He is the founder of the nonprofit Effortless Mindfulness Institute and has worked in community mental health, established homeless shelters, and counseled family members of 9/11 victims. Loch graduated from Columbia University and received a fellowship to study in Sri Lanka, India, and Nepal. Loch has collaborated with neuroscientists at Yale, Penn, and NYU in the study of how awareness training can enhance compassion and well-being. Loch, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Greg, and hi to everyone. I'm glad to be here and hopefully can dive right into some interesting and deep topics.
Yeah. So your topic today is trauma and true nature.
Yes. So, many of you have, been learning about trauma, and certainly most of us have what's often called small t trauma, at least, which is kind of developmental trauma or trauma of living in our modern culture. And some have big T trauma, which is a certain event that may have happened in your life that was severe. And then others have had complex trauma, which is kind of ongoing series of traumas of a living situation, living in a war zone, sexual or physical abuse over long periods of time. And so I was interested from early on to kind of curious about the intersection between psychology and meditation and spirituality. And so studied psychology and went off to Sri Lanka, India, and Nepal, and then came back, worked as a clinical social worker in outpatient clinics in the Bronx and Brooklyn. And so, spent a lot of time with people who had these traumas and saw the effects. Now, I know many of you have heard of Bessel van der Kolk, who says very clearly that, the body keeps the score. So when we have trauma in our lives, it activates our survival mechanism of physical, mental, emotional life. And if it's overwhelming, certainly if we're young, then what it does is we either fight, flight, or freeze. And if we can't do that physically, then we end up dissociating as a type of flight, or kind of freezing or repressing as a type of freeze, or holding it in and acting it out in different ways through addiction and drama and arguments and relationship difficulties. So this trauma that until recently, even in psychology, hasn't been emphasized, is now becoming clear that not only is it important to deal with and that all of us have it, but it's also, I think, what has kept many of us from accessing our essential self or true nature, or what's called open-hearted awareness, or sense of connection. Yeah. So the trauma disconnects us from our true nature, from our natural sense of well-being and love and freedom, and kind of freezes us in a time capsule at that age. And so when we get triggered, the trauma comes up and takes us over, as if the view of the traumatized part of us is looking at the world through those eyes through that body and mind of that traumatized child or part of us that feels as if either it's happening again or it's potentially about to happen. And so that freezing, that dissociation, that fighting, whether we're fighting inside, kind of hating ourselves or acting out outside individually or with conflict. The real sense is that if we don't recognize and find a capacity to heal and to, first of all, kind of step back and be with, so not step back and dissociate or spiritually bypass, but literally find the capacity to welcome the capacity of our true nature, which can bear what seemed to be unbearable.
How does the benefit of meditation take you from trauma to true nature?
Yeah. So meditation, in its kind of unfolding, there are preliminary practices of meditation, and then there are kind of ways to either directly access true nature through meditation or to kind of do a stepping stone approach toward recognizing this capacity. So many meditations initially are calming our bodies and our minds. So yoga, physical stretching, pranayama, breath work, certainly different kinds of breathing address our bodies and our nervous system, take us from sympathetic nervous system to our more calm autonomic nervous system, and out of either hyper arousal or hypoarousal. And one-pointed attention on our breath can do the same. It can calm and focus, but those are really only treating the symptoms. So you can do that, and there's mixed reviews of how it helps with trauma or with psychotherapy. Certainly it calms temporarily and is a better than not doing it. But I think what we're exploring today is kind of the next stages, which is not just stepping out of our sense of self and observing the content. So interestingly, there are studies from a colleague of mine at Brown, Willoughby Britton, who studied people who went into 5-day Vipassana retreats and found that newcomers, that 40% of them had negative experiences. And when interviewed, they were flooded by the contents of their consciousness when they deconstructed their ego. And because when they did that, they deconstructed the ego defenses and didn't yet have the capacity to be introduced to this true nature or awake consciousness or open-hearted awareness that can be with the trauma or the unconscious contents. So in kind of the continuation of meditation and the intersection with psychotherapy, like compassionate inquiry, which Gabor Mate does, or internal family systems with Richard Schwartz, who I co-taught with a few times, there's a feeling of recognizing the part of you that is traumatized. So that first kind of mindful move, even though your body may be flooded by the triggering, which when cortisol and adrenaline start flowing, it's hard to find that it's a part of you that it feels like all of you. But if you can find the throat clenching part, the heart ache, the belly clench, find the part that is feels like it is calling, or where the body is keeping the score. And then really regard that part with loving kindness, and ask it for some space. Then there's this mindful move of stepping back to be aware of that part. And then you can actually open up here to this more spacious and pervasive awareness that is interconnected with that part, but also has this connection to something greater and feels equally here as much as open. So it's not just opening to a witness consciousness, but in this effortless mindfulness approach, there's recognizing awake awareness that has the same taste as your body and energy, and even is within the traumatized part. So there begins to be this combination of meditation and psychology where you discover this self with a capital S, or awake consciousness, or open-heartedness, that is able to begin to, first of all, just know that this isn't who you are, that it is in the past, that it is coming up now to you, who is now with it, and is not also then importantly not just a mindful witness that's detached, although that's a kind of a half step, but is actually the feeling of being curious and compassionate, this feeling that when you ask the question, how do you feel toward this part, this embracing, welcoming you shows up as the true nature, which has been covered up and which we've become disconnected from by trauma. So there's this kind of meditation that is, the ancient direct path meditation systems that is also kind of integrated with the most contemporary trauma-based psychology that is now kind of creating these protocols or the simple systems that you can do by yourself or with other people.
Yeah, I really enjoy how you're talking about how the practices, the wonderful practices of breathing and movement and things like that are wonderful at managing the trauma symptoms, but it sounds like that it's the actual relationship that between the self and that part that is where the transcending into true nature occur.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. Yeah. And certainly having somebody with you initially, not just doing it on your own, but the ability to have a psychotherapist or coach or somebody who can be with you and guide you professionally in trauma work is really important. And then maybe even a group, or some people, going to rehab or this kind of intensive trauma work. But, certainly learning from someone who is educated, has been through it themselves, and is very supportive. However, that usually is once a week if you're not Woody Allen doing it, 4 to 5 times a week, psychoanalysis. So this, my interest has been, okay, so what do we do the rest of the
Right.
week? And so finding a meditative practice, which is in the meditation tradition, but is now using some of the tools of these more direct path, advanced yet simple practices that come from some Advaita Vedanta, these traditions called Mahamudra and Dzogchen, but also are just the premise of them is simply this, that you're not trying to build a new self, but that which you're seeking is already here within you. You've just become disconnected from it, or it's been covered over. And so how to relax and welcome and acknowledge and thank the parts that are not only hurt parts, but the protective parts, or some people call ego defenses, who are monitoring and often are the ones that are seen more than the traumatized parts, but to also step back and appreciate them for all the hard work they've been doing, let them know they can semi-retire from being you, from being us or me, and that because there's a new you that's now glimpse by glimpse being familiarized with, right? So the Tibetan word for meditation is often translated as familiarize. So you're really familiarizing yourself with your true self, or essential self with a capital S, that's beyond self, if you're using more Buddhist language, or it's nature of mind. But that is palpable and has qualities as it shows up of embodiment and clarity and compassion with a big C, not just kind of part of you trying to be compassionate toward the part that is either judgmental or hurt, but literally is the fabric of who we are, and is the fabric of the traumatized part and the fabric of the protective part that's, basically said, look, I got you this far and you ain't dead yet. So keep me fed here. Like, I don't know if I can let go into this. And that really is, as awakening has been my interest. I've always been curious, why do people get glimpses or have these peak experiences, and what either supports or keeps them from stabilizing? And certainly one of the main things is not dealing with trauma, not finding that doing a little too much of a hanging out in pure awareness or mindful witness or hippie happy bliss, trying to chant and be and not finding this intelligent nature of mind that's embodied and open-hearted, that's an open mind, open heart, that is the love that you are, that we are, that's here, that's already installed within us, and that can be accessed. And one of the greatest ways to embody it is to be with the parts that are scared or hurt.
Yes, welcoming them for sure. Would you be willing to lead us in a meditation?
Sure. Yeah. It's for a short one, I'll give you a sense of some of the meditations I have are literally this step-by-step process of recognizing the parts in you, thanking them for their hard work, stepping back, then continuing to step back. But let me introduce this kind of simple inquiry that may give you a sense that there is this felt sense, awareness that's embodied and awake here, without having to create it or develop it or make it into a intellectual understanding or an attitude. So the premise again to this, what I call glimpse practice, because you actually don't, it's not a meditation state, you actually are going to shift your awareness into this awareness-based knowing rather than thought-based, that's embodied and interconnected. So the premise is that the small protective parts, the managing parts, the parts-based or ego-centered and ego-defended constellation of consciousness is trying to keep you safe and solve the problems. Looking outside, is there any danger out there? Looking inside, what's that's hurt? Should I do anything? Should I do anything about that? So this continual mental, I think, therefore I am, problem solving, part just covers over the whole foreground of your consciousness. And meanwhile, in the background is this loving awareness that's embodied and that is alert and clear and can respond. So you know this from when you are in a kind of, when you do the thing you love in your free time, walking in nature, playing a sport, being with friends, and being with animals, children, playing, you drop out of your problem-solving mind, and yet you do things and make choices, but not by self-referencing all the time. And even people at work or who play music go into this, what I call awake flow state, and hopefully it's awake loving flow. So you're enjoying what you're doing. So that's the premise. And so if that problem solver can just relax for a moment, we're just going to see what is here that's aware, what its relationship is to our body and the whatever's in the room. So here's the simple inquiry. So just now, what's here when there's no problem to solve? So just understanding the question with your mind, and then just allow that problem solver just for a few moments to relax. And then let awareness kind of feel what's here now, just now when there's no problem to solve. And what's it like to be aware of this? And what's it like to rest as this, which is aware, without referring to thought, without going to sleep? And then as this more open awareness, what's the relationship to aliveness, sensation, your body, and the room? What if the awareness is equally inside and arising like an ocean of awareness as your body and as everything? So now from this more calm, alert curiousness, see how you feel toward your body and toward any other parts that may arise, pleasant or unpleasant, thought-based or emotion-based. And not just a neutral observer, but just see how you feel toward them. Any little parts of you that feel tired or worried or concerned or doubting. And just that kind of welcoming, embodied, awareness-based, alert, flowing presence. What do you notice? What's this like? Is this a meditation state? Or could this be your true self? What it feels like to be in awake consciousness, to be aware from who you've always been. So it's just a short little inquiry practice, but it's starting to introduce and familiarize yourself with this more subtle dimension that isn't just spacious, isn't just neutral, but is actually embracing and loving.
It was such a beautiful, simple exercise that, definitely shifted my experience, and I'm sure other people watching really, really deeply. And, you know, I like you, I want to continue to support others in bringing what unfortunately is called non-ordinary states of being and having them become our ordinary or our way of being, because that's our true nature. And yeah, your work is so beautiful and so helpful for so many people. And I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing your wisdom with us all.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. Yeah, I just feel like, as you said, just listening to you and just that feeling, and that when you taste this, which we are, you know, after trying our best to struggle and do the best we can and heal and try to be better and more loving and more, and then you like, oh, what?
Yeah.
This is here and this is me and this is so good and so real. And, you know, how can we support people finding this, being this, and realizing that it is what can heal, and it has the capacity and the depth and the love and the power to heal, because it's real, and it's what heals, and when we heal, what we find that we already are. So happy to be here with you and everyone else who's here with us today.
Yeah, thank you again. So we'll have a link to your website so that everyone can learn more about your work. And I believe that you're giving a really generous discount to your website-based mobile meditation platform that's soon going to be an app. Would you like to speak to that for just a little bit, please?
Sure. I mean, just what I realized, I wrote a couple books, and in them, you know, they're really just background toward this kind of direct experience of practicing. So even when I wrote them out in the book, here's glimpse number 23, that I realized, okay, I've got to record them and make them available and find different doorways for different learners and different types of meditators and people who have different blocks or different obscurations to access this direct awake consciousness. So I created this platform with a few hundred daily glimpses and programs and ways to introduce this. So that's available on my website, and then I'm going to create it into an app by the middle of 2023. But for now, yeah, just offering you, if you like this glimpse today, there's a few that you can try and see if that supports your healing and your awakening.
That's so beautiful and so generous of you to provide these resources for people. It will definitely help us heal ourselves and our world. So I can't thank you enough. This has been a pleasure having a conversation with you. I'd love to do it again someday. And I wish you the very best. And any final words?
Yeah, just great to meet you, and just that sense that that there is healing available, and that this access to our true nature is not just for the Olympic athletes of meditation. It's not just for the fortunate few. And as Gregg said, it's not an altered state. It's actually our natural condition. And so hopefully you'll find your way home.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching this wonderful interview, and we'll be moving on to the next one shortly. Take care. Bye-bye.